Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 4th of August, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I am your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have with me in the studio, Ben Rubin. Welcome back, Ben. What's it like arriving in Plymouth after spending a couple of weeks in London?
Joyous.
Fresh air.
Yes.
And we're also joined by Diane Rasmussen-McCaddy, who is on live link from the north of England. So welcome, Diane. Now, we've got some pretty packed news today because a lot's been going on, not only over the last few days, but over the weekend. And of course, the immigration migrant issue is very, very high on the agenda, with lots of film clip by the mainstream press, all pointing a finger at anybody who dares to challenge the immigration numbers or the manner in which the immigration policies are being carried out. We are going to cover quite a bit of this because we, the people northeast, were kind enough to let us have some film footage of the protests in Newcastle. So we're going to be looking at migration, and in that section we'll be showing some of the opinion for people who are essentially supportive of the migrants, some of the people who are clearly very worried with what's going on, and an interesting gentleman who was calling for dialogue, which seems to us to be pretty sensible. Now, we're also going to have a look at the crackdown on nationalism. And Ben, you're beginning to focus in on the fact that anybody who dares challenge the government is being labelled as a dangerous nationalist. We've got a really packed section on ads and emails, and we're also going to be having a look at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Now, Diane is spending quite a bit of time out looking at arts and culture, and this is because arts and culture are being used as one of the key mediums through which the government is attacking people's minds, not only through the woke agenda, but of course with productions which are very often targeted at young minds, the minds of children. So today's news is going to be, as usual, quite heavy, but this reflects what's happening in the UK. And if the ordinary man and woman in the street is to be able to fight what is happening, we all have to be able to understand what's happening, and we have to be able to see what's happening. So, Diane, let's kick off with just the advert for that Newcastle protest and a little bit on how the press have reported. I think we might have. I think we've temporarily lost Diane there. Not to worry. This is the key slide which we wanted to put up, which is the original advert for the Great British National Protest. Hotel confirmed, the New Bridge Hotel, Newcastle, and this was 1 o'clock on Saturday, the 2nd of August. And of course, true to form, the mainstream press, of course, came out with headlines such as this. Let's just move forward there. 23 pictures as protesters clash in Newcastle city centre over asylum hotels. And then, of course, on the right, we've got flags and 4 arrested after anti-migrant and counter-protest clash outside the hotel. So the mainstream media loves the violence. Just checking, Diane, have we got you back with us?
Yes, thanks, Brian. I'm here now. It must be the windy weather out there today that's interfering with the broadcast. So I guess it's just worth noting, as you said, the mainstream media coverage about this and the coverage of the different protests around the country have been quite interesting to see what they're saying about this. And what I want to just notice just a little bit about this before we go on to the footage that we are about to share with you today in the news. It's really interesting to look at that coverage from the Chronicle, the Newcastle Chronicle, because there's 2 sets of organizers, basically, and there's the counter-protest organizers, which we'll probably see in the clips are quite organized and premeditated. And the quote, for example, from them that was mentioned in this article, the organizer said, quote, "Yet again, far-right and fascist thugs are intent on bringing their message of hate to Newcastle. They aim to build on years of Islamophobia, anti-migrant sentiment, and scapegoating. In Epping and elsewhere, recently, we have already seen intimidation and violence aimed at refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers. Newcastle, like the rest of the Northeast, has a well-earned reputation for unity in the face of those who seek to divide us. Whatever problems we face, racism and division are not the answer. So that is from the counter-protest group, which we will see was actually quite well organized. So with that, I would like to say that thank you very much to the people that work with the Rumble channel called We the People Northeast. They have a very successful channel that they've run for several years on Rumble, and we'll put a link to their channel in the show notes. And we have UK column exclusives directly from them that they sent to me over the weekend. So Brian, I don't know if you want to introduce the first clip and we can talk through these a bit as we go through.
Lovely. Well, this is the first clip. This is just an overview of part of the protest, but you can see some very interesting things, not least pay attention to people wearing masks.
The media are instigating problems.
And they do, they sort of like, they do like cause, like, they put the action cause, but it's usually because they support minorities.
Would you talk to us, independent media?
Refugees are welcome here. Now tell them
Excuse me.
You're handing out signs. Yes. Would you like to ask the questions? Independent
No, sorry.
media.
Sorry.
Independent media.
Sorry, I can't work purposes.
Will this happen, or will they continue to align themselves with Labour politicians, with the Labour Party, and continue to cover up and try to reform and enable their racism?
So whatever local people felt, there was this well-organised counter-protest where people are allowed to be fully masked. Banners are freely available, although the gentleman giving them out didn't really want to talk to the camera as to what he was doing. And then, of course, the young lady, I'm sure well-intentioned, but full of rhetoric about what was happening, and it was all racism. And as we will hear in further video clips, a lot of it is deemed to be far-right input. So, Ben, just for me to see people in masks when clearly the police have said many, many times they're not going to tolerate people being masked up, this appears to me, at least, to be part of what I'm going to call two-tier policing.
It's certainly two-tier policing. I think a lot of those people are just cowards, to be honest with you. If you've got an opinion, get out on the street and front it up yourself, you know. And also, a lot of these people have just bust in. So you have local communities out protesting, and then these people turn up, a lot of the time ushered in by the police, and they're from out of the area.
Yes.
So there's nothing organic about this at all. And the masking is just one way of disguising who they are and where they come from, ultimately.
Indeed. Okay, well, Diane, don't know whether you've got anything to add to that very quickly.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was particularly interesting was the lady with the red hair talking about the racism, is that basically that she's saying that the Labour Party itself is racist, which is interesting because they're the ones who are obviously in charge and supporting all of this going on. I thought that was particularly interesting, as well as the idea of the people with the masks. Again, why is that allowed when that is clearly against the laws in this country to do so in a protest?
Yeah, indeed. Well, let's look at clip 2 here. And we've got two ladies who are basically in support of the migrants.
Nation states aren't like businesses. That's not how that works. That's not household budget. That's a household budget argument, which is a fallacy, because countries are not businesses.
Yeah.
You know, are they? No, they're nation states. They're not businesses. You don't know what you're going to. You're not going to. You don't know. You don't know as a country what's going to happen tomorrow. If I run a business or a household and I know how much money is coming in and how much money I've got to spend, and I can save and I can make decisions, and if I start, I can raise prices. Countries don't behave like that. That's not what they are.
We're with the kind of the people that are trying to protect the hotel and the people in it from damage and from being frightened, because having that sort of protest outside the place that you're having to live is really scary for people, and it scars them. And a lot of them have had a very hard time getting here in the first place and don't need it. So that's why we're here. But I think that a lot of people on the other side have genuine concerns, they have genuine worries, they need to be heard and they don't feel heard.
Right.
And so that's a problem. That's a problem for us all. We need to do a little bit more listening to one another and hearing, because actually we've probably got way more in common. I think that there are some active far-right racists taking advantage of that unhappiness and that feeling not heard. And that's a problem for all of us as well. Because the far-right getting a foothold benefits none of us. They are on none of our sides.
Diane, I thought this was interesting because those two ladies, okay, they're in support of the migrants and they're worried about are they safe with the demonstration going on. But at least they got to the point of saying that they recognise that other people are worried because they feel they don't have a voice. So I thought that was a very interesting statement.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. And the other thing to note is that when they were talking about the migrants particularly not feeling safe, I also wanted to say that, as I'm not sure, I have some other footage as well. I'm not sure if we'll show it here in the main news or at some other point, but people talking about how they don't feel safe because the migrants are present, because they don't know if these people have been background checked and vetted and who are they and so on. So I think this is something they're doing to increase the fear on both sides of the arguments, I think, Brian.
Indeed, and a lot of people using what I'm going to describe as learnt language is language which they've heard on the BBC, and therefore they put it in black and white. It's left-wing or right-wing racism. So very interesting to see the programming. Let's listen to this gentleman who is also for the migrants.
What would you say to the accusation that most of these hotels are populated by fighting-age men without families?
Well, I don't know whose fault that is. That must be the government who's chosen to do that.
But why would they even?
I mean, these people
not bring the families if they're coming from like a war zone or financial problems, or why would they not bring the families?
Well, really, you'd have to ask them that. I don't know, but I would imagine it's quite dangerous to get out of some of these places. So maybe they expect their families to join them if they have families. Maybe their families are being killed. Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. You'd have to ask some of them. A good thing for you to do would be to interview some of the asylum seekers, and
that would be great if you did.
Yeah, I do.
It would be great.
Yeah, I get their stories.
Ben, it seems to me this is another very reasonable individual. This gentleman is very reasonable in what he's saying, but he's freely admitting that he doesn't really understand what's happening in the whole migration agenda. Go and talk to the migrants. I would say talk to the migrants by all means, but let's be talking to Keir Starmer and the rest of the politicians over the years that have created this mess on the streets.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you.
Okay, so we're now going to switch to dialogue from other members of the public who had concerns. And I've had to use the clips that I've been provided. So there is a little bit more footage on one side than the other. Nevertheless, we are trying to give our audience both sides of comment around this particular protest. Let's listen to what this lady has to say.
I'm just trying to get a view from different sides. How do you feel about the situation at the moment? What's brought you here today?
Me kids and me grandkids.
Okay.
I'm like scared for them. You're scared to walk on the street. You're scared to come into town.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not right. I mean, I thought today, if you're running from a war or you're scared, you would take your family with you. And it just shows what they think of women and children. They've left them all behind. They've come here, they laugh at them. They're working illegally, they get everything. And like we've all worked all our lives, and I'm retired now, but I kind of get, not that I want to claim benefits, but I kind of get nothing if I needed it. But these people seem to get everything. And everyone you speak to just wants, that we want a border control. We want the borders controlled, and that's simple as, if they're legal, they shouldn't be getting anything, they should be getting thrown out. They lie through the teeth, but these people believe them. That's all right.
How would you respond to them if they called you racist, which they undoubtedly would?
That word's just being thrown out there because it's an easy one to get people into trouble or whatever, but it's not.
To silence people, basically.
To silence, and we're getting silenced all the time. You're scared to do anything. You're scared to say anything. And I never even thought of racism until all this started.
Yeah.
And I think more people are saying, well, I've got friends from every colour, every religion, everything, and we've been friends for years. And you know what I mean? They're good friends, but these people aren't our friends. They don't believe what we believe.
So some interesting points there. The key thing that came across to me is that she feels silenced. She's being censored for having any concerns and for speaking out. And this is a very dangerous place to be because, of course, the anxiety and the stress increases. But clearly she's worried about what is happening. Ben, I don't know whether you got any comment on that.
I thought she was fantastic, very reasonable, level-headed. No issues with what she said there at all.
But of course, she and many thousands and thousands of other people like her don't have a voice. Diane, I'll bring you in after this next clip, but this is a lady that makes a very astute statement about Palestine.
Hello. So we're interested in both sides of this argument, so just wondering what's brought you here today.
I'm here for my children, my grandchildren, and for women.
Right.
This isn't about Palestine. They're shouting about Palestine. It's not about Palestine.
Right.
This is for the people of this country, the women and the children. That's who it's for.
So what's the problem that the women and the children are facing?
Because they're letting a load of migrants in on boats. We don't know who they are. They haven't got passports. We don't know whether they've done anything wrong. They could be murderers, rapists, and that's what's happening in this country.
But they tell us that they're culturally enriching us by the doctors and lawyers and whatnot. And
there's no doctors and lawyers coming in on them boats. There's no way there's doctors and lawyers coming in the boats. There's not.
So what about the idea that they're only fighting aged men and there's no families there?
That's all there is. It's fighting aged men that's on them boats. I've very rarely seen a child or a woman on that boat. And then they're coming in and they're getting a hotel, money, everything, whatever they want, they're getting whatever they want. And it's wrong. It's not fair that we're paying for them.
So do you feel then that the descriptions of two-tier politics and two-tier policing are correct?
Yes.
And Indigenous people are being treated unfairly compared to foreigners.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's not fair on the people in this country who pay their taxes. Why should we have to pay for them? It's not fair.
Yeah.
It isn't fair.
But the poor oppressed people and they're escaping from.
Do you know what? I don't. If there's like a family or anything's happened bad where they are, I don't mind. But it's all men coming in. I'm not racist. I'll help anybody. I will help anybody. But it's not fair that it's all men coming in. You won't leave your life there if there's something wrong in that country. You'd bring your children and your wife with you.
Yeah. You mentioned not being racist. That's probably the first thing they would throw at you.
You know what it is? The last one I went to was at the monument, right? And we're called far right, racists and Nazis, and that's what they called them. We just stood there and just let them go on. We didn't do anything. We're peaceful. We're not going to cause any trouble. We're just worried about our country and the people in it.
So, Diane, another lady talking very sensibly, and I thought she made some really good points. She was clearly seeing through what was being played out on the streets, not only there, but in other locations.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. It was very, very interesting to hear from her to talk about the fact that it is, at least what we see, especially on mainstream coverage as well, the idea of just the men coming through on the boats. Although I would say that one thing that we all should be doing is looking at the actual statistics of the migration that is coming into this country and where they're coming from, and not just the coverage, the very emotive coverage that we see of the the men on the boats throwing their phones all around and pretending they don't have a passport, landing at Dover. That is not the entire story that's going on. And again, I would just encourage people to look directly into the UN migration reports and the statistics that are available to see what is actually happening. But it's certainly reasonable for this lady to feel the way she feels based on what people are seeing for the most part.
Indeed. Well, we've got another clip here, and this is two men. So let's hear what they had to say.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fuse. They've lit a fuse. It's slowly burning. Yeah. It's slowly burning, and eventually it's just going to be an explosion. This is going to happen every week, all over the country, till people are sick, and then it'll just kick off, and it's all going to be far-right people. That's what I say. But it's not. It's just people that want to stick up our country.
What do you think about the Essex police taxing in the far left in Essex the other day?
Well, it is.
Taking sides, that's disgusting.
They're supposed to be impartial.
And I'm pretty certain that they've done the
when they're in
same.
uniforms, they're supposed to be impartial, but they're not. These have probably bust half them in to start with. They probably showed them how to get here, fought them run, because apparently they're not even from up here.
Well, they got a whole load of ready-made signs.
Yeah, they've got ready-made signs.
So angst amongst local people, but of course this measured response is never going to be seen on the BBC or in the wider UK press, because the aim is to show the pictures of violence and clashes in order to smear the whole debate about migration and immigration and to keep it out of public dialogue. So these little clips, very, very important, showing what people really think on the ground. Now, I'm also very pleased that the camera guys actually took another clip of an Asian gentleman talking, and I think he had some quite interesting things to say. Let's have a listen.
I will say a few words. Firstly, those of you, if you're listening, I do not label each and every one of you as racist for simply turning up and having a conversation. What I do believe, though, most of you have ill-thought views and opinion, and there's an awful lot of confusion. I, for one, am prepared to have a grown-up conversation if this is what you would like to do. There are concerns, there are issues, there are problems, and there are key aspects that conversation we need to have. You know what? Let's have a proper conversation. I was there just past speaking to a lovely couple who does have key concerns about the policies of this country, how some of those policies are seriously affecting our lives, working class people's lives, and that is the real challenge. So I see in everyone attending here are individuals who really have serious concerns that needs to be addressed, and let's address it without aggression, without having some of those views and opinions that's been fed onto us. And let me say one thing, you know what? Just because there is a bad apple in one tree, it does not mean the entire tree is poisonous. And that's the view and opinion. If we aren't able to hold, you know what? You and I, we can't make our society a better place. We can't make our city a better place. We can't improve our houses. And first and foremost, we need to improve our own minds and views and get rid of some of the ill-held views and opinions. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to listen. I'm prepared to understand and look at ways of dealing with this.
So we've had people on both sides of the argument actually admitting that dialogue and conversation and for people to have their concerns aired is important. Of course, what's really happening is all of the people present there and in other locations in the UK are being played one against the other by our own government. This is the attack of the British government on its own people. And until the government's policies are fully exposed for what they're really designed to do, which is to cause chaos and breakdown in the country, we are not going to solve the issue of migration. So there has to be dialogue between ordinary people if the focus is to be brought on the people creating the problem, which in my opinion at least is clearly the British government, whether it's a Conservative government or it's a Labour government. But we'll talk more about this in, extra time. And I'll just end with 2 slides here, which is one, of course, remember the duplicity of the British state. This was a BBC report of women saying, well, never mind the abuse by the Rotherham gangs, the police were also sexually assaulting us. And so until the criminality in the police is cleared up, we are not going to solve many other crime-related problems. And I'm also going to remind people here that if the British state is complicit in propaganda overseas, which it most certainly is, using vast amounts of public money through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, then it's no surprise that propaganda is being used against people in the UK, black and white, Christian, Muslim. The attack is from a government which wishes to destroy democracy in its present form. Now, Ben, let's bring you in here because, of course, anybody who dares speak out is labelled, and increasingly, if you dare challenge migration or any other key government policy, you are a terrorist.
Literally, yes. They are using all of the levers of power against anyone who pushes back against the globalist agenda. That's what we're looking at. So earlier on this year, Prevent, one of the de-radicalisation organisations, part of the British government, redefined terrorism and introduced 3 new definitions for extreme right-wing terrorism. The first one, highlighted here, cultural nationalism, saying Western culture is under threat from mass migration and lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups. That makes you a terrorist.
So does that make the ladies who spoke very sensibly in those clips, does
Apparently.
that make them cultural nationalists?
I think it certainly does, yes, absolutely. The next category as well, white ethno-nationalism, says mass migration from the non-white world and demographic change poses an existential threat to the white race and to Western culture. So if you hold that opinion, you are now essentially a terrorist. I think a significant number of people hold that opinion. So is half the country, more than half the country now terrorists? Apparently they are. And then the final one on here, and actually, by the way, I believe both of those two. So apparently I'm a terrorist, according to the government's own definition. So the first 2 of those I agree with. I run into a bit of trouble with the third one, white supremacism. So they're saying the white race is biologically, culturally and spiritually superior to all other races. Like, I don't believe that, and you really very rarely actually hear that out in the wild. But they've also conflated that with a second point, a very separate point, which is the idea that an alternative form of government should replace Western parliamentary democracy. And actually, I do believe that we need a new form of government. The current one is completely broken. It's been, weaponized against us. Just look at what we're talking about right now. But the idea that makes me a white supremacist is completely ludicrous. But obviously, this is now being wielded across the entire system. So we talked about it being introduced into Prevent. This is now appearing in police documentation. So this is Protect UK, the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. They're using the exact same categories in their definition of terrorism. And of course, because this is the civil service, they've introduced an acronym. So this is now ERT. That's what we're calling it. Extreme right-wing terrorism is now ERT. And the policy is extremely poorly formulated. In fact, the government itself has described it as extremely confused. Well, actually, I should say Policy Exchange have described the counter-extremism policies as being extremely confused. This report came out a few days ago, was sent over to us. And actually, this was on the back of some internal documentation being leaked to Policy Exchange, which says that the UK's approach to extremism should no longer be based on ideologies of concern, but on a very wide range of behaviours including violence against women and girls, spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories, an interest in gore or extreme violence, misogyny, or an involvement in an online subculture called the manosphere. So apparently all of these things make you an extremist. So they just say this is a grab bag of random stuff that they've decided to put together that is now informing government policy.
Ben, do you think that the manosphere is flat?
Well, I believe it's a spiritual realm, actually, the manosphere. But they even admit in their own documentation, if we can get that back up on screen quickly, it says it admits itself that many who display such behaviours are not extremists. So we're putting together policies around extremism, but they admit themselves that people who display these behaviours aren't necessarily extremists. The whole thing's completely ludicrous.
The government wants to identify people as extremists to the level of terrorists, but it can't quite find the language to encapsulate people who are expressing ordinary measured concerns. So they're reinventing a language in order to label people.
Yeah.
This is the attack we're talking about. This is an attack by the policy creators within the UK government. It's extremely dangerous, and everybody has to wake up to what's happening here. As I say, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're established in the country or a newcomer, this policy will destroy you and your family and the community life, because that's what it's designed to do, unless we call it out.
Indeed.
Had to say that,
this
Ben.
is what Stalin did. This is literally what the Stasi were doing, the secret police. You know, seek and ye shall find. Show me the man and I'll show you the crime. It's that kind of mentality, essentially, which puts all power into the hands of the state. You know, and it's being deployed, right? So this is not just theoretical. There's been a huge spike in particular, over 60s. Maybe some of them are UK column viewers, referred to anti-terrorism schemes amid this supposed explosion in extreme right-wing views. But it's only exploded because you've redefined everything as being extreme right. But there's been 43 people referred to Prevent. So actually, you know, even amongst all of this kind of noise, it's a relatively small number of people who are getting referred into these schemes. But it's about suppression. Right?
Indeed, but can I just add in there, of course, many people will be referred to Prevent and they won't even know that they have been referred to Prevent. This is one of the key dangers. This is a completely secretive system until suddenly the state drags you off the streets to accuse you of something.
Right, exactly. Or they dox you, as they did recently with Morgoth. So this was Hope Not Hate, which is basically an extension of the Home Office. We talk about them all the time. They went after Morgoth back in May, saying that they've unmasked Morgoth, the British influencer who inspired a terrorist, which he didn't do. So he didn't inspire a terrorist. They got no evidence to support that, but that's now out there on the internet. And if you search for Morgoth, then it comes up and says he inspired a terrorist. You know, so it doesn't matter if any of this is true or not. And actually, the best way to understand Morgoth, apart from going to look at his Substack and his YouTube channel, is go and have a little listen to the interview that we broadcast that I did with him that came out last Thursday. And you'll find that he is a gentleman and a scholar, and you know, check it out and make up your own mind, ultimately. Sky have been in on the act as well, all of the big media platforms. So they ran this piece a couple of weeks ago, a 20-minute segment about the return to the land movement in Arkansas, in the US. They're building a white-only community in the Ozarks. And they tried to run it as a hit piece, but it actually turned out to sound a bit more like an advert, basically. You got the founder in the centre, forgive me, I forget his name. The guy on the left-hand side was the Sky journalist, who at the end of this 20-minute segment basically says that he finds the whole thing morally objectionable because it denies people the right to housing, which tells us two things. And he believes that non-whites are incapable of housing themselves. Right, that's literally inherent in that perspective, what we call the soft bigotry of lowered expectations. And then also embedded within that is the idea that white people have some kind of moral obligation to take care of everyone else, which doesn't go in the other direction. So it's a very strange set of beliefs that are being propagated here by the mainstream. Similar things happen over the past few weeks or few days even actually in the UK. So the Woodlander Initiative, it's a similar organisation to return to the land in the US. They're about taking back our land, freedom and culture, buying plots of land around the UK, helping people set up new communities, live off grid, encouraging self-reliance, which obviously makes them a neo-Nazi group. according to the Daily Mail.
So that's a typical inflammatory Daily Mail headline
Yes.
there to create fear and hatred and division.
Yes.
It's deliberate.
Yes, but the Daily Mail is supposed to be on the political right. Right, so actually, you know what I mean. There's a very odd role that the Mail plays when you get into how it's targeting these organisations. So they carried on to describe the Woodlander Initiative as a fascist land buying scheme. And interestingly, I know someone who is part of the Woodlander Initiative who is of mixed Persian and South Asian descent, who tried to comment on this article, saying that he visited this white-only camp as a brown person, found no paramilitary training or any hatred towards me. In fact, he had a good time, made some friends, and sometimes things are not what you were told. And that comment wouldn't post onto the Daily Mail site. So they prevented him from being able to deliver that there. And I think that just tells you everything that you need to know about this. If you want to find out more about the Woodlander Initiative, by the way, go and check out his YouTube channel. It's a fantastic channel. He's a lovely bloke. I've interviewed him myself a couple of times, actually. One of the nicest people you've come across. He was involved in the BNP and other nationalist political movements. But my view on that is, again, just to echo what my supposedly brown friend said there, is that sometimes things are not what you're told. And actually, some of their analysis, when you look at it, is quite compelling. And one thing I've come across recently, which I'd very highly recommend, is this speech from Jonathan Bowden, the Greenwich speech, which was delivered in July 30th, 2009. And it's very difficult to argue with any of his analysis or anything that he says, to be honest with you. So that would be my take on that. The Daily Mail took exception to Simon speaking at the Patriotic Alternative Conference last year. Go and listen to the speech yourself. It's an excellent speech. We'll provide a link to it. But what is Patriotic Alternative? That's a British nationalist community and activist group who basically advocate for Indigenous British people. They believe that the British should remain a supermajority in their own country to be able to represent their own interests in the exact same way that other ethnic groups do when they arrive in this country, you know, again, which makes PA dangerous extremists who've been heavily censored and deplatformed. They've been doing awful things like raising funds for families of political prisoners who were put in prison last year for social media posts after the killings in Southport, have been smeared by the BBC. In fact, Mark Collett, the founder of PA, went to do an interview with the BBC, which he actually recorded. It was an hour and 15 minutes long, and then the BBC used 46 seconds of it.
Yes.
Which I think you'll be familiar with that kind of treatment from the BBC, Brian.
Indeed, but I only got 6 seconds as a parliamentary candidate.
Yes. And to raise the stakes even further, Mark Collett, PA founder, was barred from entering Sweden over the weekend. And I was very grateful to be able to speak to him. And we're going to hear a little bit now about his experience of trying to get into Sweden to deliver a speech at the Free Sweden movement.
I was heading to Sweden to a event run by a group called the Free Sweden Movement. Now, the Free Sweden Movement holds a community-based weekend where people go to socialise. There are physical events like a strongman competition, there's cooking, there's burgers, there's socialising, and there's also a few small speeches. And I was heading there this weekend to basically attend this event, to attend this social gathering. And I was also asked to make a short speech, about 30 minutes long, and I was attending a meal the night before. I was seeing people there that I've met on my travels around Europe, because I've been to Europe many times, visited many European countries. And when I got to Sweden, I was pulled out of the queue to go through customs and show my passport. I was interrogated, I was accused of many things, I was denied entry to Sweden, and then promptly deported and banned from entering the Schengen zone for 15 years.
15-year ban from Europe.
And of course, we're still working with Europe, particularly in regard to counter-terrorist planning and policies. We'll deal with that in future UK column news. So Brexit without the exit, without question, and we shouldn't be surprised that we're still locked into this very dangerous European superstate.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear a little bit more about Mark's experience at the border, which I think was just deliberately degrading and designed to cause as much stress and
anxiety
as possible.
I was held without food in an airport lounge for more than 24 hours without knowing what was happening to me, without being given a time or a date for my deportation. I was denied my luggage. I was denied basic amenities that were in my luggage, like a toothbrush, change of clothes. I had to sleep on the chairs, the benches in the departure lounge. Everything that I needed to buy in there, I had to fund myself. I wasn't given vouchers for food or for a meal. I was denied a bed. I was denied any form of legal representation. I was never offered a solicitor or a lawyer. Essentially, I was treated as if I was a terrorist, and I was certainly treated worse than illegal migrants. Criminal illegal migrants come to places like Britain, Sweden, Germany, France. They are treated far better than I was.
Treated like a terrorist because by the new definition, apparently he is a terrorist.
Indeed, and a little bit later I'm going to be mentioning a certain gentleman that was also denied food for a period. Maybe we can see some similarities, but in a few minutes.
Yeah. And then just a final clip from that interview with Mark Collett, which will provide a link to the full thing in the show notes. Go and check that out, where he talks about where he thinks this is coming from.
It was almost like they were waiting for me with a judgment from very high up within the EU. And the level, I mean, when they said they were denying me entry, I was disappointed. However, when they said 15-year ban, I was blown away. I was flabbergasted, and I've never heard of anything like that before. And considering the people they let into Europe, considering the open door policy that Germany has had, and once one country has an open door policy, because of the Schengen zone, those people can travel anywhere. That's one of the major security issues that Europe faces. But for me, they view making a speech as more threatening than allowing millions of migrants from Africa, the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, to pour across our borders without checks. That, according to the EU, is a human right. Making a speech is a threat to public safety, the fabric of society, and the fundamental values on which Sweden and Europe were apparently built. That's the reasoning.
Total lunacy.
Indeed. Well, we should remember Sir Peter Sutherland's speech as my ambassador for migration for the UN, saying that more mass migration was necessary to break down the homogeneity of the nation state. So this is deliberate policy. Everybody gets hurt. The countries from which the migration is occurring, those countries suffer. People suffer in the migration route. And then the countries to which the migrants arrive also suffers. So this is deliberate policy to break down the nation state.
And top advisors to Keir Starmer, or members of their family anyway, get to make millions of pounds on the back of this whole thing. So this is Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's chief of staff, whose father has been handed £6 million over the past 2 years by the Irish government to house asylum seekers.
Indeed. Indeed. So serious things happening, and I can tell from the reaction from our audience today that this is a very important topic for them. For the UK column, at least, we have to understand the attack in the first instance is by the people who create the policy, not only in our own government, but the World Economic Forum, the UN. We have to understand why the policy is being created. And if we end up with violence and fighting amongst ourselves, we lose, because the super state is geared up to deal with violence. But more on this in UK Column Extra in a few moments. Now, let's get on to some lighter things. And first of all, a big thank you to everyone supporting the UK column. We can only do what we do with your financial support, and it's really wonderful people who donate or have signed up to become members. So if you don't know how to do that, just go to the UK column website and click here. And you can support our work by making a donation or actually joining as a paid-up member. Now, more good news in the UK Column On Location event, Saturday, the 18th of October, 2025. I'm very pleased to say that we are within a few tickets of having sold 50% of our tickets already. So if you haven't bought a ticket, you need to think about it, because the tickets are going very quickly, and it's clear that people understand the importance of this event and are really looking forward to it. This is the little online video clip showing how to do that. Go to our shop, then you can select your options, and there's two choices, a ticket or a ticket with an evening meal. And once you've bought your ticket, we look forward to seeing you at the York event. Now, future UK Column productions. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we've got Germ Warfare with James Corbett, The Nature of Power and Control. That seems pretty pertinent to today's news. And tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I have... well, it's not an interview, it's a discussion really between Charles Mallett and myself about military matters. We called it Opening Shots. It's very relaxed, but we start to have a look at what is happening in the military world, principally in UK, but I'm sure we'll be moving on to overseas matters as well. So look out for that at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Now, Ben, this one is yours. Fascinating title. Escape Key.
Yes, so this is one of the best writers on Substack, an extraordinarily intelligent and articulate thinker and writer, and this is the first ever interview that he's done. I was really privileged to speak to him a couple of weeks ago now. That's going out on Thursday, and we're talking about the history of the central banking system and how global governance has used central banking as its template for taking control over every single area of the global system. It's a fascinating talk. Make sure to tune in for that.
Excellent. Now, Diane, perhaps you'll take us through these, because, of course, we've got other excellent articles which have gone up on the UK Column website.
Yes, Brian, thanks. We've had some really, really great content, written content coming out recently on the UK Column website. So I just want to mention two here, just because we're short on time, obviously. This one was published last week by Neil Harrison. It's called The Bison and the Bias: Rethinking Methane, Climate Science, and Scientific Integrity. So actually asking us to question the science, looking at what is actually happening in science, and if they are truly following scientific principles when they're trying to support so-called climate action, if we can say it that way. This other one that I wanted to show is the latest in the Syria series by Vanessa Beeley. She's been providing a weekly contribution for us now to update us on the very complex situation in Syria, called The Zionists Are King on the Syrian Chessboard with Washington's Support. So there's a lot of detail in these, so please take a look at them. They're very good.
Okay, now, Diane, you've also had some support, and you're just going to show briefly on screen what that support was.
Yes, so this is the desk that I am sitting at right now. I'll call this UK Column Studio North. Recently, a UK Column member and very generous donor gave me this microphone and stand to put the microphone on. This is very generous, very good equipment. So hopefully people are able to hear me better than they were previously. And I just want to thank the viewer who donated that, as well as the viewers local to me who came to help me set this up, because I don't know the first thing about audio equipment. So I'm thankful to all of them for their help.
Okay, thank you, Diane. And a tidy desk is a happy desk, of course. Now, we'd also like to remind people that weekend of the 22nd to the 25th of August 2025 is the Hope Sussex Festival. Now, if you haven't got a ticket yet, please do get one, because a lot of work has been put into making this thing happen. The UK Column team are going to be there and putting in a sizable contribution. If you use code UKC20, you're being offered a 20% discount. So do have a think about this. And we are going to be there because we're putting another stake in the ground for free speech. Well, it's a camping tent peg, but you know what I'm saying here. Now, of course, this festival has been under attack from the Telegraph. The journalist was Chris Benyon. He wrote a nasty little hit piece on it, but I just wanted to point out to the audience, this is how Chris Benyon sees himself, an adult man who likes to portray himself as this figure at work in the journalistic community, which I think is rather strange and rather silly, but there we go. Now, Mike has also been very keen for people to support this petition, Repeal the Online Safety Act. Signatures just before us going live for the news today, we're up at 488,000, so that's moving. But the more signatures, the better. So if you haven't signed, get on and sign up. Now, I also want to say back to our audience, thank you very much, wherever you are in the world. At the recent Totnes event, there was a lady who had come with her husband all the way from the Azores, which I thought was really fantastic. And it was lovely to get some very positive feedback for the UK column. We also had an email in from Canada, and this one was thanking you, Ben, for your reporting on the woke agenda and what they described as the filth which you observed up in London. So we are very pleased to see that not only are people watching from Canada, they're also taking the trouble to thank us for reporting and to give us some spiritual protection there. So thank you very much. Also got this email about immigration, saying that somebody watched the news a few days ago where I was speaking about the government's plan to break up our culture through the current immigration policy. Gentlemen asking for more information. We will be putting more information out on forthcoming news. This one was very interesting because Anthony clearly picking up on the idea now that we are being attacked by our own government. And if we're going to sort the country out, the first thing we've got to deal with is the lies, duplicity and corruption in central government. Until we sort that out, we can't deal with other major problems. So people are picking up on this idea that it is the government attacking us. And this one I will deal in more detail in another news edition, but a gentleman who's been working for over 30 years to take the lid off the cover-up of child abuse in UK was arrested a couple of days ago. All of his computers and data about the cover-up of the abuse of children, that was all taken by South Yorkshire Police. And he goes on to say that basically he was denied his medication. He was kept in a cold cell where he had to request a blanket, which was given to him 3 hours later, only after the interview. And he also got no food all day. So here is the brutality of the UK state. If you're somebody not only concerned, but you're brave enough to do the research into the politicians who are covering up the abuse of children. Meanwhile, we've got Labour, who is apparently going to clean itself up by reframing the Ethics and Integrity Commission to start the process of rebuilding standards in public life. Well, of course, this is smoke and mirrors, and nothing sensible is going to happen out of this. We also had an email from with regard to Ian Hislop, where the commentator Jeff was saying that he was amused to see Ian Hislop clearly unable to understand what was happening in the country around him. Hislop was reacting. He could see something wrong, but he could not understand what it was. And of course, this is because he hasn't done any proper investigation into what has been taking place in the country over all the years that he's been reporting. Now, Diane, to finish, we bring you back in with us, and you're going to be talking about the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I'm going to say once again that this is such an important subject because this is where the government is able to unleash the woke agenda on the public and particularly on young people?
Yes, thanks, Brian. I'm actually reminded a bit of the report that Ben gave us, I believe it was last week, on the event that happened in Trafalgar Square in London, because we're seeing these things coming out through arts and culture. And this is a perfect way to look at the things that are coming out into the public through this. So I want to start, first of all, with just saying I was in Edinburgh at this festival from Friday to Sunday. I just came home yesterday evening and I took several photos. And so I just want to talk you through some things that I saw just walking out in the streets, as well as talking about some of the events that I attended. So as anyone who's ever seen, if you've ever been in Edinburgh in August, you know that a photo such as this one show that there are posters all over the city where they appear on different places, I think in this case on lampposts. We could also see as well that they're on the sides of the fences that are surrounding sort of all the neighborhoods around the city. There's a couple of examples here of all these different events. One is called Lesbian Space Crime. That's right there. There's also, I didn't go to that one, but the title certainly struck my attention. We can see over on the right side of the photo, very small, the LEZ low emission zone that has gone into effect in Edinburgh. So we're starting to see the climate agenda as well as the LGBT agenda sort of going through everything. Here's a close-up of one of the posters that I saw called A Stan is Born, not a star necessarily. A love letter to all the divas and the gays who seen them, I guess, with the rainbow, and we can't really tell who this is or what's going on. This was one of the flyers that I was handed. So what happens is when you're sitting around just having a drink or something to eat, a lot of times people will come up to you and hand their little flyers to you about their shows that they're advertising. This one, to me, was one that was handed to me, and it looked particularly evil, satanic, if you ask me. I don't really know what it was about, but we can see the photo with the person sort of half human, half not human, the cigarette with, and it says a safe space for losers, put them up. And all of the red and yellow imagery, sort of the fire imagery, just made me feel personally extremely uncomfortable. Going on from there, this was just part of my walking when I was going to an event. This was a primary school in Edinburgh, and the fence is painting rainbow colors. So we're seeing once again just the imagery of the rainbow kind of surrounding everything that seems to be going in front of children nowadays, including the gate that goes into their own primary school. After that, what do we have? This was something that was sitting in the Pleasance area with the courtyard where we were sitting having a drink. I don't really know the story behind this, but I thought it was interesting. Help us, #GetToZero. New HIV transmissions in Scotland by 2030. So what was behind that, I'm not sure, but I just keep seeing this 2030 over and over again in pretty much everything. This was the first event that I attended. This was on Friday afternoon. This is nothing in particular that was terribly alarmist about it one way or the other, but just to give you an example of a lot of things that you'll see at the Fringe Festival. This was called Out of My Head, Alan Watts is Alive and Well Dead, presented by a one-man show by a man called Jeremy Stockwell. This was about Alan Watts, who was a British and American philosopher of counterculture. You can read about him. He's kind of an interesting individual. Whether or not I agree with his philosophies, I'm not entirely sure, but Jeremy Stockwell was kind of going back and forth between being himself and being Alan Watts in the show. What was interesting about it, though, is the trigger warnings, right? So we have the trigger warning saying it contained theme references to mortality and aging with brief reference to hospital and alcohol. So trigger warnings everywhere. The next show that I saw was Michael Elsner, who is from Switzerland. He was described in the program as a former late night host, political scientist, and queer artist. There was a big focus on the queer in this particular presentation, delivering offbeat perspective, spot-on impressions. Can his secret Swiss recipe save the world? So his question was about how to live in paradise. One of the things that I didn't find particularly insightful at all, and he was a comedian, but I don't think I laughed a single time in the entire event, was saying that his idea of paradise, or one of his ideas of paradise, which he ended with, was the feeling of using the loo when you really need to do so. So whether or not that's paradise, I don't know. But what was speaking of the loo, when I used the loo in the event venue, which was the Gilded Balloon at the University of Edinburgh, we can put this up on the screen. We see things in the University of Edinburgh, which again is one of the highest ranked universities in the world, apparently. but it would seem as though the adults that go to the University of Edinburgh don't know to take care of themselves in the bathroom. So we see a very cartoonish person of somebody sitting on the loo saying, we all have bad days, but remember, this is a shared bathroom. So please clean up after yourself. Be kind. There's that message again to everyone who uses this space. And also in the same loo was another photo that I took telling people to always remember to keep the toilet clean, flush properly. Don't throw certain products into the toilet that don't belong there. Don't stand on the toilet when you're using it. Please sit down. And finally, remember to wash your hands. So again, university messaging, basically an infantilization of the people who are there, in my opinion. So to sort of refresh from that a bit, on Saturday morning, this was an event that was actually not part of the Fringe Festival, but the Edinburgh International Festival, which happens around the same time. There are several other festivals, including the Book Festival, that happen in August in Edinburgh, in addition to the Fringe. This one was Colin Curry, who's a marimba percussionist player, along with the King's Singers, which generally was very nice. It is worth noting, however, that the theme was about death overall in their program. It was recorded for the BBC Radio 3 broadcast. But two particular things that I really enjoyed was the performance of an English madrigal from 1608 by Thomas Weelkes called Death Hath Deprived Me. So again, the theme of death. There was a world premiere by Sir James Macmillan, who's a Scottish composer. The surtitles were really kind of fun, though, because they were written in sort of Scots or at least Glaswegian language, and they said they tried to sing in that particular dialect. After that, I went to what was the most political thing I attended, at least overtly political, was Ian Dale, who was the presenter of the evening show on LBC Radio, and he was interviewing Rachel Reeves. We have a photo of the two of them together that I took. I'm not sure if we can get that on screen really quickly, where we talked about, she was saying, well, she was the first female chancellor of the Exchequer in the country. So again, this is Rachel from Accounts, as some people called her online. She talked about Margaret Thatcher proving that she could do the job as prime minister, and she watched her growing up. There's quite a bit of discussion around women that have taken these roles. Again, I'm personally more interested as a woman as whoever can do the job the best, whether or not they are male or female. But this was a particular focus of the conversation. She talked a little bit about how she got into politics. She joined the party in 1996 when she was in sixth form, and talked about getting involved in campaigns and so on. She didn't really talk a whole lot about the issue of the national debt or any of the budgetary issues to any extent, although there was quite a bit of focus on things around net zero, her concern about net zero not being so popular in the polls, the rise of reform, saying that reform and the conspiracy theories around net zero that reform apparently brings are concerns of hers, and they know that they are more of a competitor for them coming up into the next election, but potentially more than the Tories. Issues around Corbyn's new party. Is this reform on the left? And then she talked a lot about her day when she cried during Prime Minister's questions a few weeks ago, and how difficult it was to see the coverage, that she was in tears during that particular day. And she just said, I just had a difficult day. I couldn't help it. So we were asked in some cases to provide written questions to her that were supposed to be answered at the end. That she didn't really answer a lot of the questions that she was given directly, except for the very last one, which Ian Dale read from the audience. And he said, well, we have a lot of questions here about the national debt, but here's the one that I really want to ask you is, who has the best hair in the Labour Party? To which she went on to a long story about how her hair color got changed when she was just trying to make it shinier, and how stressful that was, and what she was dealing with her hairdresser and her hairstyle. So again, if she wants to dispel the idea that women cannot be politicians, I don't think that she did herself a lot of favor by ending her time talking about her hairdresser, Brian.
She could have stopped the question dead because it was ridiculous and concentrated on the important thing. But significantly, I'm going to say, like a child, she didn't. She went with the fun side. So more of it. Cover the rock opera briefly, Diane,
Yeah,
and then we'll go to your final image.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This was the favorite thing, of personally speaking, and potentially one of the most meaningful things that I attended at the festival. This is called Dystopia, the Rock Opera. So we had people in masks, but the masks were not COVID-type masks. They were masks of Putin, of the North Korean leader, of Trump, and other people. So this was a particularly fantastic event. I will have more about this in extra time.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we must end there. So a new course available, apparently.
Yes. So this was something I saw on social media. Keir Starmer has a course on offer, and it says, want a new challenge? Retrain as a lefty. 2-day courses, no previous experience needed. Full tuition in twisting the truth, toxic wokeness, unaccountability, sense of entitlement, cancel culture, fence sitting, zero personality, virtue signaling, and finally, how to be offended by everything and anything. I think I need to sign up for that because I am not good at any of that, Brian.
Okay, well, we'll end there. Big thank you to our audience. Thank you to Ben and you, Diane, for being with me today. Learning and understanding the attack against us is the most important thing. Stay calm, carry on, call out the people really driving the chaos and madness. That is the task of the wider UK population, and UK Column will do everything it can. We will do everything we can to get that knowledge out there. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye.